and I've been with the organization my whole life. Outside of being a solicitor selling the newspaper and working at Alfie's Fish and Chips, this has been my life. And I've transitioned within the organization to multiple different careers. And so that's what's gotten me where I'm at today, just working hard and staying consistent and staying loyal and not moving around. It's interesting. I hear a lot of people talk about how, the norm is to move X number of times in your career. And I can tell you that slow and steady does win the race, and that there is something to be said about consistency. I thought many times that I would pick up and go someplace else, right? Chasing the shiny object. And I'm glad I didn't, because when I look back now, I know that would have been the wrong thing, that you start over. It's kind of like when you lose all your wealth in the stock market, and then you cash out and you go buy someplace else. Well, you start over, and when you lose 50%, it takes you 100% to get back to the place that you left.
Welcome back to another episode of the Builder's Bible. I'm actually talking to my friend Brett Binkley. He is a friend of mine through Rise Up Kings, and he is a CEO of a company that he actually sold a number of years ago, and they are a design and construction management company. And correct me if I'm mistaken anything, but they do some pretty large contracts for state and local governments. And I'm excited to pick his brain. It brings us a new kind of avenue, a new arena for our construction discussions we've been having. But Brett, let's start with this. Tell us your story a little bit. Tell us how we got to where we are today.
Sure, Andrew. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. So really, my story began back as a kid working in the family business. I realized that I liked drafting, which was the support mechanism to engineering. And so I entered drafting in junior high, and then in high school I did vocational drafting, and then went to work for the family business. Out of high school, I did a gap year and worked full time, and then went away to college and got a master's degree, and came back and fell into it full time. And I've been with the organization my whole life. Outside of being a solicitor selling the newspaper and working at Alfie's Fish and Chips, this has been my life. And I've transitioned within the organization to multiple different careers. And so that's what's gotten me where I'm at today, just working hard and staying consistent and staying loyal and not moving around. It's interesting. I hear a lot of people talk about how, the norm is to move X number of times in your career. And I can tell you that slow and steady does win the race, and that there is something to be said about consistency. I thought many times that I would pick up and go someplace else, right? Chasing the shiny object. And I'm glad I didn't, because when I look back now, I know that would have been the wrong thing, that you start over. It's kind of like when you lose all your wealth in the stock market, and then you cash out and you go buy someplace else. Well, you start over. And when you lose 50%, it takes you 100% to get back to the place that you left, right?
Yeah.
So,
that's really good. Well, tell us about the company. So you, Binkley and Barfield was the name of the company, and then you sold it about 4 years ago, you said. So tell us just a little bit about the company and the journey for you to kind of grow it to where you grew it.
Sure. So we realized my father passed away in 2006, and my business partner and I we looked back and realized that the company had been rather flat. We hadn't really focused on high impact growth and making, huge strides in the marketplace. And so we set a vision out to do that. And within about 4 years, my sister decided she wanted to leave the organization. And so we needed to buy her shares out. And we decided that an ESOP would be the initial correct route to do that, so that we could pay her, and then we could begin to make the employees business owners, so that they would act like an owner, right? The decisions that they make would be long-term based decisions, and they'd get incremental shares of the company over time. So fast forward a little bit, we started to really grow, and we started to get a lot of success. We've got a lot of long-term employees, and that was maybe one of the reasons that people, besides creating a great culture and really caring for our employees, we also gave them, a stake of ownership. And so we got to a place where we realized that a complete internal recapitalization of the company just wasn't going to fulfill our goals, right? It was going to take another 20 plus years to do it properly. And so we started to team with larger organizations who really wanted to take it further and try to acquire us. So we had done what I call professionalizing the business. You know, businesses go through multiple stages from the startup and take off to growth and then really mature business centered businesses. And we were in more of that growth stage, and we needed to really accelerate and move outside of what our current capital needs could provide. And we ran across an old friend who had been in the industry and grown an organization really large. He had actually retired, and some private equity guys had tapped him to get into the professional services design engineering space. And so he called on us, and we were agreeable to further the conversation. And he had a brilliant plan to build a national based firm by keeping the original character and intent of the organizations he was requiring. So we kept our name in the marketplace, we kept our culture of who we were, but we were stitching together a lot of companies all over the nation to create one big large company, and that's where we're at today. So we were about 55 to 60 million when we sold, and we'll be pushing 100 4 years later.
That's amazing. So tell me, maybe what are some of the insights? There's a lot of people listening to this show that probably would like to sell their business one day, and that's kind of, one of their long-term plans. What were some of the things you learned through that process? And like, what would you say to somebody who's gearing up to potentially, like, what should somebody be thinking through now to make that dream a reality?
Yeah, interesting that you asked me this because you and I have never talked about this, but I'm actually with a group of guys and we're creating and actually a consulting and a training program called Get Ready for Sale. So one of the things that is really important is to understand how to replace yourself, right? Too many times we get what you'll call either founder syndrome or the entrepreneur syndrome, where everything centers around the initial person who started the business. And so as you grow a business, it's really important that you get a team, right? That you really deepen your bench. And then secondly, you have to create processes. And I know that you're in the VA and the AI business where you can create things that are repetitive, that are processes that are industry standard and become your standard operating procedures that allow the business to run. Then you've got to make sure that your financials, all your reporting is absolutely to the highest standards, that you're really living in the 12-month trailing world, that you're focused on what your balance sheet really is, says, and does, that your income statement, you're not just living out of your checkbook. Too many times small companies live out of their checkbook, right? They look at the incoming cash flow and the outgoing expenses, and that's how they run their businesses versus creating income streams, understanding what their book to burn ratio are and all the big KPIs, key performance indicators that are required to stabilize, run, and grow a business and keep it so that it's repeatable year in and year out. Because if you're going to buy a business, what the acquirer is looking for is sustainable cash flow and the
Yeah.
ability to continue to work for those clients, right? And if it's just that individual's relationship, then that could be a risky situation, and there will be a discount applied if they even would acquire you in that situation.
Yeah, that's a really good word. I mean, I think a lot of business owners know that they need to be able to replace themselves, but I talk to a lot of people who are still, just kind of scrambling. And I think you're talking about systems, processes, repeat cash flow. I think that's a really, really good word. Let's talk about like the actual core work of the business. Like, what is like walk us through like how a client finds you or like where these deals come from and what the scope of work typically entails.
So a lot of our business is repeat customers. And I know you have to initially find customers, but we're a 52-year-old company, and we work a lot for cities, counties, and governmental agencies. So we are hired not on price, but on our skills. And because the civil engineering world requires us, it's almost like the Hippocratic Oath from a physician's perspective, in that we have to protect the traveling public, right? We have to protect. So we are hired based on our qualifications. So we would respond to a request for qualifications, and it would require us to present the individuals, their resumes, their experience, our scope, how we would tackle the presented project that needs to be completed. So it's a very long business cycle, if you will, because we have to obviously find how the agency is going to be funded, and then understand what their needs are, and then understand how we can be a solution provider to help them fulfill the problem or the issue that they've got to solve. So
Yeah.
it's a long business cycle, and it's repeat business continuously. You're
Yeah.
about as good as your last project in many instances. So you got to always stay on your game.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about AI for a second. Where do you feel like it's affecting or being used or leveraged by your company or your industry?
So I think we are slow to implement a lot of technologies, and have been as an industry, and that's a shame. But I think where we're using it most is in the marketing aspect, the assistance in the writing aspect, the assistance in scheduling. It hasn't fully gotten into the design process, and I think it will certainly take over much of the design process, because mathematics is a pure science. But how you apply that mathematics to the situation, the context application in a built environment is certainly different, because you can go out and collect data from a survey, and from the time that you've collected the data and the time that you've built the plans to go out and or design the plans to go out and build the project, what's on the ground can change.
Hmm.
So AI is going to play a huge role. It's not going to be the big sweeping. We feared when the internet. I actually was running our computer systems when both we went from manual drafting to computerized, CAD, and went from the mainframe into server centric desktop computing. And I mean, I was running our computer system at Y2K, which everybody thought the world was going to end, kind of a thing. So when the internet really took over, right, and we had the World Wide Web and the ability to search, and I know I'm taking us through a history lesson here, but there was so much fear that we were just going to replace people and jobs with technology. And though we will create higher efficiencies, we will not replace the human aspect of it, because there's just so much required. Once you gain higher efficiencies, you just move everything to the next level, and you expect so much more. So it's going to take the people to continue to apply new skills based on AI and other tools to continue to improve, because everybody sets a new bar, right? When you're a higher performer, think about when Roger Bannister finally broke the 4 minute mile. It was
Hmm.
broken again within, I think, less than 3 months. But it had never been done in the history of man. So AI will do the same thing. We will continue to raise the bar. We will continue to become better. We will mimic those things that get put into the marketplace, and the expectations will be from a brand new baseline. And if you don't evolve and meet those expectations, then you'll not be a competitor in the marketplace, and you'll have to find something else to do.
Yeah. Talk to us about this new project that you're working on with helping people get ready to sell. That sounds really interesting. So, like, what's the typical offering that you envision doing with business owners? Like, how is it coaching? What's the thing that you kind of implement with them?
Yeah, so it's all above, and we're actually using AI a lot in this process. But really, we've realized that there's so many baby boomers out there that are looking to find a way to transition. Right, they've given their heart and soul to businesses all their lives, and they need to find how to de-risk themselves and to access some of the equity that they've built in their business over time. So we've created a lot of it is. It's like taking a college course, really, an advanced college course to understand. And so the individuals will participate. they'll listen to videos, there will be exercises that they do, and then they'll come together as a cohort group and they'll share with a group of other like-minded business owners in various industries, not necessarily the same, who are looking to exit their business at some point in the future. And we work with them both as coaches and facilitators and advisors to help them make sure that the things that they're doing in their business are what is attractive and being looked for by the acquirers. You know, there's a major statistic that most people don't know is that only about 30% of the businesses that want to sell are able to sell because they just don't have the
Mm,
systems in place for an acquirer to see the sustainability, to be able to come in and acquire
mm.
their business and make it into something that they sustain without that owner staying on board. So it's an integral part, and people have to start early to make sure that they're setting up their business and getting it ready to be able to be acquired.
That's really good. It's interesting because I work in a part of Denver called Cherry Creek,
Yeah.
and if you throw a rock, you hit a private equity firm. And so they're all, acquiring different, roll-up strategies. I have a guy in my community group from church who oversaw like a valve distributor roll-up strategy. And it's so fascinating to me to just kind of see the way that the baby boomers honestly are getting minted. Like a lot of the blue collar guys, especially, the apparently the hot thing right now is roofers. The all the roofers I talk to, they're like, yeah, we get two, three, four calls a day from private equity firms.
You bet.
So
And you
yeah,
can't replace the physical labor required in crawling on a roof and putting the shingles on, but you can come in and automate that business. How do they acquire the materials? How do they, the old thing from years and years ago is just in time inventory, but how do you make sure that you're not buying materials and things that you don't need, creating higher efficiencies, dispatching, limiting the amount of HR problems that you have, or just the internal workings of a business is so critical to its efficiency, much less delivering a really good quality product out in the field. So great point, Andrew. This is just it's an amazing time in our industry and
it's an
business.
amazing time to be alive, my friend. It's
It is.
crazy. So yeah, and that could be pretty fun, Brett. Something we could work together on is creating the automations inside these businesses you're helping get ready to prep to sell. I mean, that would increase the enterprise value, I would imagine, if they had
I would
that.
love that. I think it,
Yeah.
it certainly will because I think too many business owners are fearful of technology, right?
Yeah.
Especially as we age. The belief that that's for another generation is just it's a strangling mindset, and I hate to see people limit their ability because AI is so user friendly. If you'll just open up your eyes and go and really start working with the differences that are out there. And I think
Yeah.
that's why companies like yours that help people break that fear and introduce them to the positives of it are just going to be overwhelmingly in need. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Again, the company is called Freedom AI. I just believe that AI is a tool to create freedom. That's all it is. It doesn't have to be
It
scary.
certainly is. I agree with
Yeah.
that 100%.
What's one thing that we haven't talked about today that fires you up? Is it a hot take you have, or your book? What's one thing that we could talk about that would get you excited?
I'm a consummate learner. I mean, I just love to read and I love to learn. And I think that anybody who's listening out there is chase your passion, find it, even if the work you do today doesn't fully feed your passion, right? If it's not that thing that you grew up as a kid, wanting to do all your life, find a way to go out and give and be a mentor to others, but continue to learn and continue to find new ways of solving old problems, right? The things that got you to the place where you are today aren't the things that'll take you to that next level. And
Yeah.
so that's what drives me is just the ability to help people get unstuck, if you will, to
Mm-hmm.
get out of a doldrum that maybe the mental mindset has gotten them into or their own lack of confidence in a certain area, but just to really achieve and strive and just bring out that inner self that is just in you that's just dying to be unlocked.
Yeah.
That's for me, that's like that just excites me just to help people find that new place in life and really step to that new level.
I mean, it's so interesting, man. Mindset is everything. I know it's really cliche, but it really is as a business owner. I was talking to somebody who was doing really well, and he's like, you know what it is? It's tenacity. It's just the ability to keep pressing through regardless of the whatever barrier or hurdle comes at your way. And he was
Yeah,
100% right. Yeah.
read Grit, read Atomic Habits. I mean, these are all, just they're concepts. But if you'll take this information and allow information to cause a transformation in your life, you'll become something that you couldn't have imagined, and it'll happen over time. But that
Yeah.
positive attitude is really a driving force in so many ways.
Brett, if people want to learn more about who you are and what you do, where can they go?
So you can reach out to me at Brett at Real Equity IP. That's in IP is in investment partners, but realequityip.com. Brett at realequityip.com. And I've written a chapter in a book. You can see it sitting behind me. I'd be glad to share that with anybody if they'd like to have it. And just outside of that, I'd love to help anybody I can. That's the kind of thing that excites me is learning new things like you're working on, Andrew, with Freedom AI, and being able to really go out and make a difference in the world and in people's lives.
Yeah. Amen. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Don't go anywhere because I want to chop it up with you, but thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.